What's going down, friends? It is Cooper back with the Welcome to Cooperville podcast. Excited for this episode with Lou Brutus. But first, a special thanks out to our sponsors, Midwest Meals and MidwestMeals.com. Cut the crap, cut the meal prep, quality, healthy food on the go. Man, you got places to go, people to see, and still want to maintain your macros, keep your health on point, keep your diet on point. MidwestMeals.com. Click on there. They have 13 rotating meals each week. They're throwing new stuff in there. They got the Cravings Crushers. Now you can order those as many as you want to get you through the week with your snacking. And it's simple. MidwestMeals.com. Order up. Get your order in by Friday. And they ship nationwide on Monday. Meals? Check for the whole week. Plus, get yourself 10% off your first order with the promo code Cooper. Use that at checkout. MidwestMeals.com. #MidwestFitFam. Podcast is also brought to you by Violent Gentleman Hockey Club online at violentgentleman.com and your promo code Cooperville15 for 15% off your order. Hockey season heating up. You want the gear, the cool gear, the badass gear, not the crappy pansy stuff from the 80s. Look like you know what you're doing. Violent Gents, also all over social media. And of course, proudly sponsored by Monster Energy, Monster Hydro, Muscle Monster, everything to get you through your workouts, to get you through your day. If you live in the Midwest, we get about 2 hours of sunlight each day, and it's not even really sunlight. It's like 2 hours of light, cloud-filtered light. So it always feels like it's nighttime. Get you on some of that Monster Ultra, 0 calories, 0 sugar, plenty of boost to get you through the day. #Monster Podcasts. Very excited for this conversation. Lou Brutus, one of my idols when I was in radio, still to this day one of my idols as far as radio personality, syndicated radio show host, concert goer, photographer, and fan of live music. And let's add author to his repertoire as well. Lou Brutus on this episode of the Welcome to Cooperville podcast. It starts right now.
Welcome to Cooperville. The Welcome to Cooperville podcast. On demand anywhere quality podcasts are available. And some places where cheap podcasts are available.
At the local gas station has some.
Subscribe, get updates, feel better about your life. Welcome to Cooperville.com. Check.
Welcome to Cooperville.
Make sure you use a coaster.
Man, myth, legend is kind of that three-word phrase that is thrown around when you talk about somebody of iconic nature. And for me, Lou Brutus is somebody who defines that in the art of radio, rock and roll, music in general, and just overall fantastic human being. And Lou Brutus joins me on the podcast. Lou, thank you so much, man. I really appreciate you taking some time out to chat it up with us, man.
That was a very kind introduction. There's no effing way I could live up to it, but thank you anyway. And the feeling is mutual. I'm really happy to be here with you. And yeah, you and I have a lot of rock and roll travels between us. So it's great to be here.
You know, I'm really excited. I got a chance to read the book, Lou Brutus, Sonic Warrior, My Life as a Rock and Roll Reprobate. And first off, congratulations on getting, I shouldn't say that. First, congratulations on still being in existence. I am glad that you are alive and we are able to have this conversation because some of the stories in here, Lou, I mean, we're talking verge of death kind of stuff.
Well, yes and no. I mean, I never went to Keith Richards' extremes. Like, if you want real OD stories, like Keith or Nikki Sixx's book is really great too. They're both fun reads. They're both informative. You know, my adventures, at least in that respect, have not been nearly as crazy. But, man, I'm just glad to be able to get up any day of the week and still be around music and make a living. I mean, I've been doing this stuff since I'm about 12 years old. You know, the opening chapter, which is the most biographical, is entitled "The Time I Attended My First Concert and Threw Up on Carlos Sanchez." And it's about going to my first concert when I had just turned 14. It was December of 1976, Black Sabbath, Ted Nugent at Madison Square Garden. Hilarity ensued. But I've been a part of rock and roll since even before that. And to be able to still do it, and make a living at it. I honestly, I consider myself one of the luckiest people on the entire planet.
You know, there was a great opening even before that first chapter. Be the pointer was something that your father said to you as you were sitting down getting ready to watch the Beatles on, was the Ed Sullivan Show, I believe?
Well, yeah. Well, and actually, I didn't see the Beatles on the Ed Sullivan Show. I wasn't old enough to do that. I only remember Ed Sullivan from his much later days. But being a little kid, I just thought that the Beatles would always be on Ed Sullivan because that was his most famous episodes, and so I would watch every week, hoping that maybe the Beatles would make a surprise appearance, which they never did while I was watching. And my dad, and he told me this many times through life. He said, "Son, be the pointer." And I turned around from the floor and looked up at him. He had Dad's spot on the couch, as many dads do. And I said, "Well, what do you mean, Dad? What do you mean, be the pointer?" And he said, "Son, we watch Ed Sullivan together every week, and the acts come and they go." He said, "The musicians, the actors and actresses, the jugglers, all of these people, they might be there one week and they're never back again. It's not steady work." He said, "But Ed Sullivan is there every week, and he has zero talent. He can't do anything. All he does is point. Here's the band. Here's the actor." And he's there every week making a lot of money. He said, "So if you're going to go into entertainment, be the pointer." And it's still some of the best advice I ever got in my life. Another two pieces of advice, which are in the postface of the book, were also from my mom and dad. They were, take care of your hearing, which I did not do. Now I have severe hearing loss. And the other was keep a journal. My mom always said, even from when I was a kid, she said, "You're doing all these interesting things. You're meeting all these, these stars and these famous people. You think you're going to remember everything. You should keep a journal because you're going to want to write books one day." And of course I said, "I can remember everything." And I said that because I'm a moron. So didn't keep a journal. I probably could have had 10 books out by now, but at least I listened to my dad when he suggested I be a pointer.
But you did take it to the next level when it is about keeping items and keeping ticket stubs and keeping laminates and passes that you got throughout the years. I mean, what is that when you get a chance to, and I'm not even sure where you house this stuff, because after, as many places as you've been, as many acts as you've seen, as many opportunities as you've had in the industry, I mean, that collection does it have its own like space in the house? Do you have another place that you rent, like a storage facility you get to go and visit once in a while?
I have off-site storage where pretty much everything is kept. And again, that was originally the book I wanted to do. Now, the book that's out, Sonic Warrior, it's a collection of stories, and each chapter is a separate story, and it's all this, like you said, all this crazy rock and roll stuff. But the original book I wanted to do was of the memorabilia, and I thought, like a coffee table sized book with all of the things I've collected. Because again, I've been to north of, and I'll never know for sure how many, but over 3,000 different music events. And I've pretty much kept every single item from everything. I've kept every ticket stub, guitar pick, posters. I've gotten guitars from bands and stage outfits. I've never counted everything. But I'm sure if you just added up all the individual items, it's probably 10 to 20,000 different pieces. I've got set lists. The posters, I've got like 1,500 different posters. Many of them are, and you've seen some of these things because we've been together at Rockfest where I'm carting these things around. Some of them are covered in signatures. Like I have Ozfest posters that have 50 to 100 signatures each on them from Ozzy, every other band on down. So I'm hoping maybe if this book does okay, maybe then we do like another book of stories. But eventually, I would love to put the whole collection into a coffee table style book. When I first signed with my literary agent, because the only way you're going to get a book deal, you have to get somebody to rep you. It's sort of a long, involved process. But I told my lit agent, "Hey, I want to do this book with all this rock memorabilia," and he said, "That would be a really great book, but you can't do that as your first book." And I asked why, and he said, "Well, a coffee table book like that is expensive. It's a larger format. It's colored ink. It's nothing but pictures. Nobody is going to give you a first book deal based on that. He said, you know, you have this other idea for a book. This is a great first book. Put all these crazy rock and roll stories together. You vomited out of the helicopter on everybody at Live Aid. There's a great story. You know, you were in the Arctic in a Inuit Eskimo village with Metallica. Put that in the book. And he said, that book we can get out easier than the other ones. So that's why I have this book now, and hopefully down the line I'll be able to put everything in. For people who are interested in that memorabilia stuff, on my social media, I often put pictures. It's a small fraction of it, but it's still a lot of things, and particularly on Instagram. But I'll post some days, hey, here's 6 different first tour Slipknot posters autographed by all 9 band members. And I've, you know, Slipknot alone, I've probably got north of 50 posters, all covered in signatures, every band member, including Joey, who's no longer in the band, Paul Gray, who is no longer with us, who was just a lovely guy. And he was always one of the most interested. When I brought posters to get signed, he would want to go through them and see what I had. Because I often had stuff that the band didn't have. I have some one-of-a-kind posters that were done for venues that I managed to get before the band could get, and then would have everybody sign. I've always kidded the Slipknot guys that one day they're all going to want to do books on their career, and they'll want these posters, and I'll be like, you'll have to get them from me, you bastards.
You're coming through coming through Lou's gate for those ones.
Yeah, exactly. So. Yeah, no, and having the big collection like that, it's both a blessing and a curse. It's wonderful to have, but it's a nightmare to keep and store. I got about halfway through cataloging everything in Excel spreadsheets, and I haven't updated that in about 5 years, and there's thousands of more pieces I've got to put in. But one thing that does reference all of that is there is at the end of the book an appendix, and I've listed, to the best of my knowledge, all of the bands that I've seen live. And that, what is that? It goes on for like 50 pages, I think.
Yeah, it's extensive. It's an extensive list.
Yeah. And the ones that I've seen, the ones I've interviewed are put in bold. But I have pretty much something from almost every one of those bands on there. So that'll give you an idea, the enormity of the collection. But it's all in cases, and it's all in poster rolls, and it's all away where nobody can see it or enjoy it. So maybe one day the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame will invite me to put a bunch of stuff in there that they can put in the lobby or something. That would be fun.
There you go. I think you have several thousand bargaining chips in storage.
Yeah.
You know, you mentioned Slipknot, and your relationship with them, you know, comes through in a couple of places inside of the book. Corey Taylor does the forward in the book. Tell me about that relationship, just because I always said there's 2 people in the rock world that if they combined powers together, they could run for president and VP, and it really wouldn't matter who took the top billing. But if Corey Taylor and Dave Grohl ran for, you know, the top office in the country, I believe they would win, and I would believe we'd have a better country. But your relationship with Corey, just reading, you know, his kind words in the forward, and about your impact, not only just the radio aspect of it, but with that relationship between you and bands across the country. Tell me about, you know, the Slipknot relationship and a chance to get out, and not only Slipknot, but obviously Stone Sour with Corey and Jim Root. You know, that relationship. Tell me about it.
Yeah, it started. I got long before the debut album on Roadrunner came out, I got an advance of some of the tracks, and it was not a finished record. And I thought it was very punk, actually. Not that it's punk rock, but there was punk rock in its DNA, in both its sound and it seemed the attitude. And I just loved it. I thought on that first listen that Slipknot was one of the most exciting things I had ever heard. You know, part of it was the percussion, part of it was the slight bit of hip hop, the slight bit of punk rock in its DNA. It had a lot of things going on in it, and I just thought, man, this is amazing. And then I start to read up on them, and I realized, I'd heard about these guys they were like a band that was sort of bubbling in their local scene back in Iowa.
Yeah.
And started to play Wait and Bleed before there was even a finished version of it. Started to play it from coast to coast. And unbeknownst to me at the time, the guys had, who all grew up in Des Moines, and one of my very first affiliates for Hard Drive was Laser there in Des Moines, and they would air it on Sunday night. And amongst the guys in the band, Corey, who was still working in a porn palace, like the edge of town place to buy porn, he listened to the show on Sunday nights and always said, I'm gonna be a guest with Lou Brutus one day. My band is gonna make it. We're gonna be stars. And I saw them for the first time, and I just thought, can I curse on here, by the way?
Absolutely. This is non-FCC regulated airwaves right here, Lou.
I thought as much. I want to make sure you were okay with it. I just went, holy shit, what the fuck is this? And I knew what to expect, but it still blindsided me. Where it looked like a Hieronymus Bosch painting of hell. Like it was the craziest thing I'd ever seen on stage. And I went back to meet the guys, and they had already heard me playing them, and not only just playing them, but really sort of starting to try and be a prophet in the wilderness about this new band, Slipknot. Anyway, the guys appreciated it, and I started going to see them every chance I could. And people have to understand, that album was out for like a year and a half, and nothing was happening. It made some ripples in metal circles, but in the grand consciousness, and certainly in sort of regular rock radio, nothing was happening. And I had people like bad-mouthing the band to me. Oh, they wear masks. It's a gimmick. And I'm like, you got to go see them. This is the most incredible thing I've ever seen. I don't care if everybody says I'm crazy. And I just kept all my support behind them. And then they exploded. And I remember as that first tour cycle wrapped up, and it was like 2 years, that you could tell that it was just really something had happened with them. And it was one of the most exciting things I've ever been around. I remember the last shows on that tour. There was a Halloween show in New York City. And then the final night of the tour was the next night, the Electric Factory in Philadelphia. And they knew they were going to go right back in and work, and that there was a huge future for the band. A quick aside, and I don't think I put this in the book, but a week or two after that last show on the tour, and again, I went to like 30 shows on the tour. Like I went to a lot of shows. Wow. But a couple of weeks after that, there's a knock at my door. And I opened the door, and it's my local FedEx guy who, I knew he delivered stuff all the time, and he had a ginormous box. And I looked at him and I said, "What the hell's that?" And he laughed. He said, "I was kind of hoping you'd tell me." I said, "Bring it on in. Let's open it up and see." And we opened the big, ginormous, FedEx cardboard box, and inside it is a road case. And it had some, stencils on it. And I thought, oh, my God, I think this is something really cool. And we open up the road case, and inside of it is one of the guitars. I can't think of the model guitar. It was the green one. It's not a Gibson. I want to say Gibson. It wasn't a Gibson guitar, but Jim Root had played it every single night of the entire first Slipknot tour. Wow. And he sent it to me, but before he did, he literally had all 9 members write thank you messages to me on it, just for being the first guy to sort of stick his neck out. And it's again another thing that's in a box locked up in storage. Nobody can see it and enjoy it. But that was that's again, amongst all the memorabilia and stuff I have, that's one of my favorite absolute pieces, and really one of the great kindnesses. And Jim Root has been very nice to me through the years. But that was pretty spectacular. Although I wouldn't be against him doing it again.
If they have an extra, if he's going to be out. Oh yeah, that's right. They're going to be out again this year. Yeah, they know where you are. The FedEx guy can drop it right off. And...
But those guys have always been great to me, and I'm often invited out. I'll grab a bunk on one of the buses, and and go out for it. You don't stay too long. You don't outstay your welcome, but to hit the road with them and be able to, I do a lot of photography, of course, and to be able to have free reign to shoot the entire show and shoot backstage. And, I suppose in a way it helps career-wise to do that stuff, and it gives me kind of cool stuff to put in my social media feeds, but it's just fun.
Right.
There's nothing more fun than hitting the road with a band, getting on that tour bus. I wouldn't want to do it for a living. I always compare it to camping, going out on the road with bands. Like, it's fun to do for 3 or 4 days, but after that, it's like, you people are animals. I want to go home. But, while you're out there, there are few things as fun in life.
There's the Slipknot reference, I think, makes a great tie-in to you and the longevity that you've had and the experiences that you've had, because there's also a reference to Disturbed in here at a point where they were in their infancy. They were playing a side stage. For you as, not only the radio personality, the syndicated show host, but a music fan, photographer, what is it like for you to be able to see these bands like Slipknot and like Disturbed go from a band that nobody's heard of or a band that's buzzing in, small town USA somewhere to where they're the power now. They're the upper echelon. They release an album and their songs are all bullet to number one. I mean, what's that like for you to be able to watch these bands kind of go from not nothing, but the very start, that story about Corey Taylor, listening to Hard Drive on Sunday nights at the porn shop, which I'm sure that soundtrack to those who were, making purchases, maybe garnered you a couple of ratings points there in Iowa. But, for you to be able to kind of be witness in even closer proximity to fans than to see these bands go from, the garage to having that first single to the explosion, and then to be able to continually grow and evolve and to become, masters of their craft as they are today.
Yeah, the thing that I feel the most is happiness for the bands. Mm-hmm. Because anybody who has been in a band, and I mean, if you never even made it out of playing in the garage or mom and dad's basement, being in a band is fucking hard.
Yeah.
And it like, I've seen bands with zero talent. When I was a kid, all my friends were, we were all music heads, and most everybody tried to be in bands or were in bands and stuff. And people fight, they get in petty arguments. Like, being in a band is hard. And then when you add, like, hey, we're going to do this for a living and do it professionally, it's the odds against you. You literally have a better chance of hitting Powerball than you do of making it as a band. Because Powerball, there's generally a winner every week or two.
Yeah. How
many bands truly make it every year? A few?
Maybe.
Not many.
Yeah.
So that's why, and I know how hard bands work. And I have seen it up close. It's sacrifice. And listen, the fringe benefits are great, but the people who actually get all of those fringe benefits are a tiny, tiny fraction of everybody who gives it a go. That's why I always sort of resent when, rock stars, they get their asses kissed. It's such an easy life. People who say that have no clue the sacrifices all of these people have made to try and make it. That's why I am happy for even the bands that I don't particularly care for musically, isn't my cup of tea. I'm happy for I'm glad for Taylor Swift. I'm glad for people in pop. I'm glad for anybody who can get a living out of this, let alone become rich and successful. It's really, really hard. So yeah, to be able to see it up close happen to people that I think are talented, that's a really great feeling. There are a lot of bands, and I just thrown it out there on social media recently, who are the most underrated bands out there. And there were bands named that are phenomenal bands that have achieved a great amount of success, but probably not all the success they deserve. Seven Dust might be the greatest example. They're one of the most phenomenal bands ever to exist. Saint Asonia, Alter Bridge, that might be the most talented band on the planet.
Yeah.
In terms of just raw ability. And they're certainly a very successful band, but are they playing arenas and stadiums? No, they're not selling. They don't headline those sorts of places, and they should. There are bands that have been doing this a long time. I feel should be 1,000 times bigger than they are. Best example is probably Cheap Trick. Cheap Trick might be the greatest straight up rock and roll band that has ever fucking existed. And if you have never gone to see them, they are still out on the road. They still put out phenomenal records. They are still one of the best live acts on the planet. I'm going to see them again this week. I go see Cheap Trick every chance I get. So yeah, to be able to, back to the original question, to be able to see these folks and through the years amass enough stories, that I can put into a book, is it's just a good feeling, and it's fun. But again, I'm more than anything happy for the bands because it's so much harder than it looks.
I think one of the great things about the book, and we kind of talked about this before we started recording, is that the stories are all broken up individually, and there's not necessarily, it's in chronological order. Maybe the best part, it ends and begins with you throwing up on things,
yes,
it's a great bookend for a book.
And actually, by the way, the full title of the book is Sonic Warrior: My Life as a Rock and Roll Reprobate, Tales of Sex, Drugs, and Vomiting at Inopportune Moments.
And Thanksgivings, we gotta start from childhood. But the meat and potatoes of the guts of the book, the inner workings of it, I mean, phenomenal backstage stories about the magical powers or evil powers of Keith Richards, to the Stevie Nicks story, which was amazing. Something that, even though we're not rated here on podcasts, the Nick the Pig story from the Motley Crue. Don't even go into details. The chapter is called "The Time Motley Crue's Roadies Showed Me the Grossest Thing in the History of Western Civilization." Now, Coop, back me up on this. Oh man,
what I described, what they showed me, was it in fact the grossest thing in the history of Western civilization?
The craziest thing of it, because when you read that open, you read that title of the chapter, and you're reading it at the same time you're thinking of, like, what is the worst thing I could possibly imagine in my mind? Like, you're reading the story, and you kind of got the the local cruise. Talk about the local cruise in that chapter, and kind of the, okay, here's your deal, and here's what you got to do, and having been in those shoes, but not in those particular shoes, thank God, at that moment in time, but having been on the side stage waiting for the stage manager and the strict rules that you have to walk out onto a stage like that, and you have this much time, and all those things going through your head, I'm going, God, what on earth could? And then you drop the story of what Nick the Pig is all about, and I had to set the book down and take a short walk, get some fresh air. I had to reevaluate my existence as a human being, and then pick it back up and finish it. But I mean, it's so Motley Crue. Like, I can't even, like, I'm like, okay, if this is any other band, if this is any other artist, I'm going, this doesn't make any. This is so, like, what the fuck is, like, who are these people that they're bringing out? Motley Crue. I'm like, yeah.
And I say this in the nicest possible way. Motley Crue and their road crew back on that tour were degenerates. Absolute, just the most perverse degenerates to ever exist in rock and roll. And again, mean it as a compliment.
Yes,
love the Motley Crue guys, but it might be one of the sickest things that people ever read.
It was, and I've read a lot of shit, and that's 8-Ball Corner Pocket in the what the fuck did I just read category there. That was
well, and by the way, if this part doesn't make people want to buy my book, then by God, nothing will.
Nothing
there's vomiting. There's Motley Crue's roadies showing us things that are frankly illegal in, I think, most states and many countries, and would probably involve the death penalty in some more conservative areas of the world. So, and I do want to remind folks, they can get the book at this point, pre-order via Amazon, Barnes & Noble. They can also go through my publisher, Rare Bird Books, and they can, I just found out, they can pre-order from Rare Bird right up until publishing date, and those will be autographed first editions. But I will be doing a massive amount of book tour stops, and they'll be happening all year long. But I will also be doing 2 formal signings at Rockfest in Cadott, Wisconsin. And the books will be available there. I'll be signing like 2 nights, all night, one after Slipknot and one at the pre-show party on the Wednesday. I'm making other stops in Wisconsin and all over the country. And I just want to see everybody come on out. It would be great to see you. And just buy my fucking book. It's filled with rock and roll degeneracy.
It really is. The whole book is fantastic. Lou, thank you for sharing your time and for sharing your stories. I think, we for those who listen to Hard Drive, we get a chance to listen to your stories that you get to tell on the air, but to have them in kind of this focused chapter by chapter life experience, survival of the fittest, Nick the Pig. I mean, I'll never look at Snoop Dogg the same way again with you two coming back together this coming July. So it's such a great read, and I'm so happy that it's out and that I got a chance to read it, man.
Really appreciate it, and I will see you at Rockfest.
Absolutely. Looking forward to seeing Lou at Rockfest in Canal, Wisconsin coming up this July. That's the Welcome to Cooperville podcast. I thank you for listening. If you are a first-time listener, welcome. Hope you enjoyed. Be sure on whichever podcast platform you are listening that you do subscribe. Leave a comment, leave us some stars. That's always nice. It's nice to get feedback. Nice to know what we're doing is good or it sucks or whatever. Your opinion is valid. And we are on the socials. Welcome to Cooperville. Search for us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. We are there. Interact with the show. Ask questions. Who knows? Maybe you'll make it on an episode. And until then, see ya.